in 1987, I started my organization called Journeys into American Indian Territory. Because in those years from 1985 to 87, I began lecturing, and I would meet with different groups of people. Sometimes I would be with children, and sometimes I would be with adults. And one of the things that I often said to people was, I'm going to explain a little bit about how things work, but really, for you to really grasp what I'm saying, you'd have to be there with me. And that was kind of a seed that was in the back of my mind, an idea that I wanted to take people with me to have the rich personal experiences that I had had when I was in Oklahoma. At the same time, I was in touch with a friend of mine who was an Indian graduate student at the University of Oklahoma with me at the same time. And he had been teaching a graduate field school, a summer field school for the University of Oklahoma. And the two of us came up with this idea, why not take the format of the summer field school for students and change the format a little bit so that it would work for people who were not students or just had an interest in this area. And the first summer we did it as an experiment in the summer of 1987. And we brought a small group of people out to Oklahoma. We lived in teepees for the week. We went to powwows. We went to people's homes and just tried to give them an opportunity to learn directly from Indian people of the various different tribes what contemporary reality is like, who Indian people are today in the modern world, and how they're able to keep their identity in spite of the fact that they're living in the modern world. So at the end of it, we decided that that experiment was a very positive one and that we had really attained that goal. And so we decided the following year to open it up to a much wider audience, and I began promoting this new organization called Journeys into American Indian Territory. They would learn about the history of the area, the diversity of the tribes who live in Oklahoma, recent history, a little bit of prehistory, but most importantly, learn from Indian people who they are today in the modern world through word-of-mouth explanations and even participating in some of the ceremonies. Eventually, he went back to the university to doing the field school, and I kept that part of the program of bringing in other people from other parts of the country and even from other countries, because eventually we did programs for the Smithsonian. I had a number of groups of people come from Germany and from other countries, did custom tours, and also offered this to the general public. I added another branch to this organization, Journeys into American Indian Territory, which is bringing this experience into schools, trying to create a cultural immersion experience for children, usually elementary school age, here in the general New York area where I live. So it started out with just a few schools and just a few artifacts, but eventually we ended up putting together an entire museum program on Eastern Woodland Indians that covers the New York State curriculum, and Plains Indians that looks at the way of life of the Plains Indian people. So we developed over the years two separate museums, one on Plains and one on Eastern Woodlands, and as the demand increased for the woodland programs, my wife Maddie and I started out doing the program together, but eventually we got so many schools interested in it that we ended up having to separate. So she works with one Indian presenter, and I work with another Indian presenter, and we now do way over 140 schools a year. So that's kind of a quick overview of how I got from a graduate student in 1980 to bring us right up until today, and the work that continues through this organization, Journeys into American Indian Territory.